Howdy BookTube. It's your boy Buck, back with another episode of Buck's Books. So today's is a book that I've been saying that I'm going to read for many years, and then just not reading. And I just never got around to it until I finally got around to it. And it turned out to be bad. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Broad strokes, first thing you have to understand about this book is that it is exactly the coursework you will receive during your first semester of psychology undergrad. Everything discussed in the book is going to show up in your 101 level coursework. Intro to Psychology will cover most of it. If you take anything relating to cognitive psychology, that'll clear up the rest of it. All of it is incredibly rudimentary. But he did put little spins on it to make it his own, which is all that we can really discuss here. Kahneman divvies up the brain's functionality, the thinking fast and slow, into System 1 and System 2. And System 1, let me look. Yep. System 1 is fast, intuitive, and emotional. System 2 is slower, more deliberative, and more logical, and that is right from his little blurb. So, System 1 are these knee-jerk reactions. And in actual science, we know System 1 as like the HPA axis. You know, the hypothalamic pituitary axis, specifically the amygdala, right? And System 2 is going to be the actual cognition that takes place in the frontal lobes. So when information comes in through your eyes, shoots up the retina, the first place it stops is going to be the amygdala, because evolutionarily speaking, that's a matter of life or death. It determines if what you're seeing needs the kind of immediate responsiveness that would have to take place before the rest of your brain catches up with it, right? So as it shoots straight back to the amygdala, it's also taking a more circuitous route to get to the frontal lobes. And in the frontal lobes, it's actually dissecting what's going on there. It's trying to use, higher reasoning, orbital prefrontal cortex. It's trying to rationalize. It's trying to rationally comprehend what the eyes are seeing and develop a response rather than a reaction. The thing is, the reaction is already taking place because the news hit the amygdala before it hit the frontal lobes, which is why people have things like flashbacks when they're traumatized. They are conditioned to a particular stimulus, which, when they are reminded of it, launches their amygdala into hyperdrive before they're... You good? Alright. Launches the amygdala into hyperdrive before the frontal lobes get a chance to check in at all. So the frontal lobes eventually do, and they're like, okay, no, false alarm, no, we're not in immediate danger, someone just wore a cologne that we remember from a trauma. But by this point, the amygdala is already cranking out adrenaline and cortisol in great quantity, and odds are things are escalating to the point of some sort of pressure release, be it a mood swing or a panic attack or just run-of-the-mill fight or flight response, crying jag, trembles, whatever, what have you, right? So those are the two systems. Kahneman says that those systems are systems that he discovered, and they are determinant as to how we respond to things, and we tend to prefer System 1. Because that's where our heuristics live. The System 1 is where all the shortcuts live. But the problem with System 1 is the shortcuts aren't always reliable. Sometimes you do something stupid, or racist, or otherwise unacceptable. You know? Living on System 1, knee-jerk reactionary measures. And it also leads to the kind of behavior that's going to result in more of these mood swings, you know? And it's also more likely to lead to this kind of explosive and self-destructive behavior that you see coming out of things like mood swings. You're just reacting entirely on emotion at that time. Whereas the thinking process, that's going on in the frontal lobes, that's going on in system 2. But system 2 is hard. And system 2 takes energy. And system 2 takes effort. And the brain really doesn't want to expend that. So that's one of the things. So that's one of the things that he talks about in the book, that the brain is immensely reluctant to have to engage in involuntary work if it can avoid it. So it prefers to just have like a checklist handy that it can immediately refer back and forth to and save itself the trouble of having to noodle something out. I won't say that's the only original thing that he put in the book, because that wasn't really original, because like we knew that. But it was the first time I've heard it phrased that way. And after that, he just cited a whole bunch of just like psych studies you've already heard of. He talked about the Stanford Prison Experiment. He talked about Solomon Asch and his line studies. He talked about the one with the gorilla, when there's that video where like they wanted the participants to count how many times the ball got passed or something like that, and a dude in a gorilla suit just runs through in the middle, and nobody saw the one in the gorilla suit because their mind was filtering it out. He talks about that. So like, if you haven't done intro level psych classes, maybe you will get a lot of problems with this book. Maybe that's the reason this book comes so highly recommended, because there are people who hadn't encountered any of this before. But all of it was very old hat, and the book was, I'm going to say, 7 times too long. Could have been a pamphlet. Could have just been his thesis, and I wouldn't have had to read it. He could have made a poster out of it and just hung it up in wherever he does his little experiments, and that would have been just great, but less marketable. So he turned it into this whole book, and I read the whole book, and I really dragged my feet through the whole book, because he's not like a spectacular writer either. A strong 2 stars, because it's all accurate. You know, he didn't make anything up. He wasn't lying to us, as far as I know. But there's just nothing, no substance to it, or no new substance to it. And that's why I do this. You know, the reason I'm wading through all of these books all the time, especially when they come recommended, is because I'm trying to learn something new, or at least see a new way of looking at it. And instead, I went through, how many pages is this monster? A 500-page book. Instead, I slogged through a 500-page book to learn exactly nothing new. Because it's all pop science. You know, because it's all so surface. So it's really just like a summary of your freshman year. Assuming you went into the humanities track, or human services, something adjacent to that. So if you did that, skip the book. Do yourself a favor. You don't need to read it. There's no reason to read it. If you didn't, and you've never heard of some of those experiments that I just... How about the marshmallow study? You know about the marshmallow study? With the kid who had to wait for 2 marshmallows? And that predicted future success rates at everything? So if you haven't heard of like those studies that I named, everyone has. Those are really, really popular, common studies. They're cited in virtually every book in pop psychology. But if you hadn't run across them, then maybe you will get something out of this book. By all means, subject yourself to it. But don't say I didn't warn you. Alright, I think this is a speedrun record for us, actually. We're going to come in a little under 10 minutes. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode of Buck's Books. I'm probably going to do another, because this only took 10 minutes. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, comment. I mean about the comment. The more comments, the better. Comments are a lot of fun. All right.